When my daughter looked me in the eyes and told me I was nothing but a burden she wanted out of her life, I collapsed right there on our kitchen floor. Days later, I was standing in a courtroom watching her face turn ghostly white as her secret scheme unraveled before dozens of strangers. That's when I realized life isn't just a poker game, it's one where your own child might be hiding cards up her sleeve. If you're watching this, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're from. Because trust me, this story twists harder than a tornado in Texas, and you won't want to miss what happens next. My name is Eleanor, and for 63 years, I believed that family meant something sacred. I spent decades working at Martin & Associates Accounting, a small firm where I started as a receptionist and eventually became office manager. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid enough to give my daughter Carla everything I never had growing up. When David, my husband of 35 years, passed away 3 years ago from a sudden heart attack, my world shattered. Carla was my rock during those first few months, bringing me meals, handling the funeral arrangements, even staying over some nights when the silence in our home became too much to bear. "Mom, you don't have to worry about anything," she'd say, rubbing my shoulder. Dad made sure we'd be taken care of. I believed her. After all, David had been careful with our finances, and the mortgage on our modest 2-story suburban home had been paid off years ago. Between my retirement fund, David's life insurance, and our savings, I had enough to live comfortably. Not wealthy by any means, but secure. Or so I thought. Everything changed 6 months ago, on what began as an ordinary Sunday. Carla came over for our weekly dinner, a tradition we'd maintained since she moved into her own apartment downtown. She was 38, successful in her marketing career, divorced with no children. I'd made her favorite pot roast, the way her grandmother taught me decades ago. As I served dessert, apple pie with vanilla ice cream, Carla set down her spoon and cleared her throat. "Mom, we need to talk about your future," she said, her voice oddly formal. I smiled, thinking perhaps she was concerned about my retirement plans or wanted to discuss health issues. "Of course, honey. What's on your mind?" She didn't smile back. Instead, she straightened her shoulders and spoke in a tone I'd never heard from her before. Script part separator, I think it's time you consider selling the house," she said flatly. "It's too big for just you, and frankly, the upkeep is becoming an issue." I blinked, confused. "What do you mean? I love this house. Your father and I built our life here." Carla sighed, the kind of sigh adults give when dealing with difficult children. "Mom, I've been thinking about this for months. You're getting older. The stairs are becoming dangerous. Just last month you mentioned your knees hurting. That was a passing comment," I exclaimed. "Everyone gets aches and pains." She pressed her lips together. "I found a nice senior living community about 20 minutes from my place. They have activities, meal plans, medical staff." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Senior living? I'm only 63, Carla. I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself. Her expression hardened. "Are you? The garden's overgrown. There are water stains on the ceiling from that leak you neglected. And let's be honest, Mom, you're lonely here." Those words stung, but I held my ground. "This is my home. Our home. Your father would." "Don't bring Dad into this," she snapped. "He would want what's best for you. For both of us." "Both of us? What does this have to do with you?" That's when the mask slipped. Carla leaned forward, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "This house is worth over $400,000 in today's market, Mom. That money could secure your future and, well, help me too. I've got some investment opportunities that could benefit us both." I stared at my daughter, this stranger across my table. "Who are you?" "Shilawgid, a short, sharp sound. I'm being practical. Something you and Dad never were. All that money tied up in this old house when it could be working for us. Isotodap, my hand is shaking. This conversation is over, Carla." She stood too, her eyes cold. "Think about it, Mom. But don't take too long. The market won't stay hot forever." I thought that was the worst of it. I was wrong. Script part separator, Over the next few weeks, Carla intensified her campaign. What started as suggestions morphed into relentless pressure. She began stopping by unannounced, pointing out every imperfection in my home: a loose doorknob, a creaking floorboard, the slightly faded paint in the hallway. "Mom, I found some papers Dad left," she announced one afternoon, dropping a folder on my kitchen table. "His will states that I'm executor of the estate." I frowned, picking up the documents. "I've never seen these before." "Dad gave them to me for safekeeping," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "He knew you'd be emotional after he passed." Something felt wrong. David and I had always shared everything. Why would he keep this from me? "I need time to look these over," I said. Carla snatched the folder back. "There's nothing to review. It's straightforward. I handle Dad's assets now. This is still my house," I insisted. Her face changed then, hardening into something unrecognizable. "Actually, Mom, it's not. The house was transferred into a trust." "Encontrou de trust." The room seemed to tilt sideways. "That's impossible. David would never." "He did," she cut me off. "And now I'm making an executive decision. You have 30 days to move out." I couldn't breathe. "You're evicting me?" "You're on my dear." "I prefer to call it transitioning you to appropriate care," she said coolly. "I've already put a deposit down at Sunny Pines Senior Living." "Carla, please." "It's done, Mom. I've already listed the house with a realtor. There's an open house this weekend." "Isso der, my world imploding." This wasn't just about money anymore. This was betrayal at its most primal level. "Get out," I whispered. "Excuse me." "Get out of my house," I shouted, my voice breaking. "Now." She looked almost amused. "Your house. Haven't you been listening? This isn't your decision anymore." As she walked out, she turned at the door. 50 days, Mom. I suggest you start packing." That night, I didn't cry. Something inside me had shifted from heartbreak to determination. "If Carla wanted you war, she de get you one." == script part separator ===. I called my friend Margaret the next morning. We'd worked together for 20 years before retirement, and if anyone would give me straight talk, it was her. "She can't just throw you out, Eleanor," Margaret said firmly after I explained. "That's not how the law works, trust or no trust." She showed me papers, I said, my voice hollow. "Papers can be forged. Papers can be misleading." Margaret paused. "Listen, my nephew Thomas is an attorney. Let me call him." 2 days later, I sat across from Thomas Billings in his downtown office. He was younger than I expected, maybe mid-30s, but his eyes held the sharp intelligence I needed. "Mrs. Wilson, based on what you've told me, something doesn't add up," he said, jotting notes. "Your husband never mentioned this trust arrangement to you?" "Never. We made our wills together 10 years ago. Everything to each other, then to Carla after we're both gone." Thomas nodded. "I'd like to look at those original wills and investigate this trust Carla claims exists. She has all the papers." "Not all of them." His smile was reassuring. "County records, property deeds, probate filings, these are public information. Give me a week." That week was the longest of my life. Carla sent movers to help me pack. She emailed links to furniture I could buy for my cozy new apartment. When I refused to respond, she called my neighbors. "I'm worried about Mom," she told them. "She's getting confused. Forgetting things." The betrayal cut deeper than I thought possible. "My own daughter, painte-me a senile to justifice in my home." 6 days after our meeting, Thomas called. "Mr. Wilson, can you come to my office?" Immediately. His tone sent chills down my spine. "What is it?" "I'd rather not discuss by phone, but..." He hesitated. "Bring your house keys." "And don't tell Carla you're meeting me." An hour later, I sat stunned as Thomas laid out 3 documents. "This," he pointed to the first, "is your husband's actual will, filed with the county. No trust mentioned." "This," he continued, sliding over the second document, "is a trust agreement with your daughter's name on it, dated 3 months after your husband died. His signature is there, but..." I looked up. "But what?" I had an expert examine it. The signature was forged. The room spun. "Are you saying..." I'm saying your daughter created false documents to steal your home. Thomas's eyes were steel. And that's not all. Look at the third document. As I read it, my hands began to shake. It was a loan agreement for $150,000 against the house, taken out in my name. I whispered, I never signed this. I know, Thomas said. We're dealing with serious fraud. Identity theft. Forgery. What do we do? Fast, we secure your home. His voice hardened. Then we set a trap. Script part separator ===. Thomas's plan was meticulous. We changed the locks that afternoon. Then he filed an emergency injunction preventing any sale of the property. But the most critical part was gathering evidence without tipping off Carla. Don't confront her yet, Thomas warned. We need to understand how deep this goes. That was the hardest part, pretending everything was normal while my daughter thought she was stealing my life out from under me. I started packing boxes as instructed, even visited Sunny Pines for a tour. All the while, Thomas was following the money. 3 days before my eviction deadline, Thomas called. Mrs. Wilson, we've got it. The fraudulent loan. Carla used it to invest in a nightclub downtown with her boyfriend, a man named Rick Simmons. I've never even heard of him, I whispered. He has quite a record. 3 bankruptcies and pending charges for investment fraud in Arizona. My stomach sank. She's being conned. Or she's in on it, Thomas countered gently. Either way, she committed serious crimes against you. The next day was when everything exploded. Carla arrived with a small moving truck and 2 men in uniforms. Time to go, Mom, she announced, walking in with a key that no longer worked. When she found me sitting calmly at the kitchen table, not a box in sight, her face darkened. What's going on? Where are your things? I'm not going anywhere, Carla, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. She laughed, that new cruel laugh I'd come to dread. This isn't optional, Mom. The house is sold. No, it isn't, Thomas said, emerging from the living room where he'd been waiting. And you have much bigger problems than a failed real estate deal. The color drained from Carla's face. Who the hell are you? Thomas Billings, attorney at law. He placed a folder on the table. We know everything, Ms. Wilson. The forged will, the fraudulent trust, the illegal loan in your mother's name. Script part separator ===. Carla's eyes darted between us, her composure cracking. This is ridiculous. I'm helping my mother transition to appropriate care by stealing her house and forging her signature on a $150,000 loan? Thomas countered. I have power of attorney, she insisted. Thomas slid another document forward. No, you don't. This is your mother's current power of attorney, naming me as her representative. Signed yesterday and fully notarized. You can't do this. Carla shrieked, her cool facade completely shattered. I stood up, finding strength I didn't know I had. Actually, I can. This is still my house, Carla. My name is on the deed. David left it to me, not you. Dad would have wanted. Don't, I cut her off. Don't tell me what your father would have wanted. He worked 30 years to pay off this mortgage. For us. Not for some nightclub scheme with a man you've never even introduced me to. Her eyes widened. How did you? Rick Simmons, I said quietly. 3 bankruptcies and facing fraud charges in Arizona. That's who you're throwing away your family for? Something flashed across her face. Fear, maybe, before hardening into defiance. You know nothing about Rick. He's a brilliant businessman who sees opportunities others miss. Like vulnerable widows with paid-off homes? Thomas asked. Carla turned to the movers who stood awkwardly by the door. Start loading her things. Now. Thomas stepped forward. Gentlemen, I suggest you leave. This woman has no authority to hire you, and you're currently trespassing. The men looked uncertainly at Carla, then at the legal documents on the table. Go. Carla screamed. I'll do it myself. But the movers backed away, muttering apologies. When they were gone, Carla turned on me, her voice shaking with rage. You'll regret this, Mom. You have no idea what you're doing. I know exactly what I'm doing, I replied. I'm protecting myself from my own daughter. Script part separator, She stormed out, slamming the door so hard a framed photo fell from the wall. David holding Carla on her 5th birthday, both beaming at the camera. The glass cracked diagonally across David's face. Are you all right, Mrs. Wilson? Thomas asked. I picked up the broken frame. No. But I will be. That night, I slept behind my newly locked doors, but rest wouldn't come. Around 2 a.m., headlights swept across my bedroom wall. I peered through the curtains to see Carla's car in my driveway. She wasn't alone. A man, tall, slender, with an expensive leather jacket, paced beside her, gesturing angrily. Rick Simmons, I presumed. I took a photo with my phone, my hands trembling. When they tried the front door, finding it locked, I dialed 911. There are intruders attempting to enter my home, I whispered. By the time police arrived, they were jimmying the back door. The officers caught them red-handed. Ma'am, do you know these individuals? An officer asked. That's my daughter, I said, the words like acid in my mouth. And I've never met him before. Neither has permission to enter my home. Carla's face contorted with rage. This is my property. She's confused, mentally unstable. The officer looked at me doubtfully until Thomas arrived, summoned by my panicked call after 911. I have documentation proving Mrs. Wilson is the legal owner, he stated, and that these individuals were attempting burglary and possibly worse. They were taken to the station. I declined to press charges against Carla, not yet, but insisted on a restraining order. She's still my daughter, I told Thomas. A daughter who was ready to throw you into a nursing home and steal everything you have, he reminded me gently. The next morning brought another shock. Thomas called, his voice urgent. Eleanor, there's something you need to see. I've been searching for your husband's financial records and found something unexpected in a safety deposit box inventory. What is it? A second will. Dated just weeks before David died. Officially filed, but somehow suppressed. Script part separator, I clutched the phone tighter. What are you saying, Thomas? He took a deep breath. It appears your husband made changes to his will that someone didn't want found. I'm heading to the bank now to access the box. 2 hours later, I sat in Thomas's office, staring at a document that changed everything. This is legitimate? I asked, my voice barely audible. Completely, he confirmed. Properly witnessed, notarized, and filed with the county. But someone paid to have the filing buried in the system. David's revised will was clear. The house and bulk of his assets were to remain mine, as we'd always planned. But there was an additional provision, a small trust of $50,000 for Carla with specific conditions. To my daughter Carla, I read aloud, tears blurring my vision. This sum is provided for your education or business endeavors, accessible only with approval from trustees Eleanor Wilson and James Hatfield, to ensure responsible use. James Hatfield, David's oldest friend. A man Carla had always resented for his lectures about financial responsibility. Thomas leaned forward. Your husband knew, Eleanor. He knew Carla had money problems. The realization washed over me. David had tried to protect me, even after death. There's more, Thomas said gently. We found bank records showing Carla had been stealing from your joint accounts for months before David died. Small amounts at first, then larger sums. The betrayal stretched back years, not months. While I was grieving, while she was helping me through my darkest days, she'd been systematically preparing to take everything. But why hide the will? I asked. Thomas's expression was grim. Because of the final clause. My eyes dropped to the last paragraph and the air left my lungs. Should any beneficiary attempt to defraud, coerce, or otherwise harm Eleanor Wilson regarding this estate, their portion shall be forfeit and donated to the West Side Children's Hospital. Script part separator, Everything suddenly made horrible sense. Carla's desperation, the rushed timeline, her association with this Rick character. She was drowning in debt and needed money fast. But she couldn't risk triggering her father's forfeiture clause, so she created an elaborate scheme to push me out for my own good. The question now was what to do with this information. Thomas laid out my options. We can file criminal charges for forgery, fraud, and attempted theft, he explained. Or we can use this as leverage for a settlement that protects you going forward. I stared out his office window, watching people hurry by on the street below. Ordinary people with ordinary problems. How had my life become this legal thriller nightmare? Let me think about it, I said finally. That decision was made for me the next morning when I opened my front door to find a reporter from the local newspaper on my porch. Mr. Wilson, I'm Grace Shane from the Herald. I'd like to talk to you about the accusations your daughter has made. My blonde code. What accusations? She handed me a printout of an online article. The headline blared, Local Businesswoman Fights to Protect Elderly Mother from Financial Predators. The story painted me as a confused old woman being manipulated by unscrupulous attorneys. It quoted sources close to the family claiming I had early dementia and was being isolated from loved ones who only wanted to help. But the most devastating blow was a quote attributed directly to Carla. My mother has become increasingly paranoid and confused. She's fallen under the influence of a predatory lawyer who's convinced her to change her legal documents. We're heartbroken and just want to get her the care she needs. E crumple de paper, ragem de humilhation burning through me. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was war. Script part separator, I called Thomas immediately. Mrs. Wilson, I've already seen it, he said grimly. The Herald called me for comment. She's trying to destroy my reputation, my dignity everything. That's exactly what she's doing, he agreed. And it's libel. We can sue, but first, we need to contain this damage. Within hours, Thomas had arranged a meeting with the newspaper's editor, bringing along my complete medical records, showing I'd had a physical and cognitive assessment just 2 months prior with perfect results, and documentation of Carla's fraud. By evening, the Herald had pulled the online story and was preparing a retraction. But the damage was spreading. Friends called, concerned. Neighbors watched from windows as I collected my mail. Even my church pastor stopped by to check if I needed anything. My humiliation was turning to white-hot anger when Margaret called. Eleanor, have you seen the comments Carla's making on Facebook? She asked. I hadn't. I barely used social media. But what Margaret described made my stomach turn. Carla was sharing heartbreaking updates about her journey to save her mother from elder abuse, complete with childhood photos and tearful pleas for support. Worse, her boyfriend Rick had joined the campaign, positioning himself as a concerned advocate helping Carla fight corrupt lawyers and the broken system. They'd started a fundraiser for legal expenses to protect Eleanor. They're raising money using my name? I was incredulous. Thomas confirmed it was true. Over $7,000 already, with a $50,000 goal. That's when I made my decision. No more reading. No more private negotiations. File the charges, I told Thomas. All of them. And contact that reporter from the Herald. I'm head to tell my side. Script part separator, 2 days later, I sat across from Grace Chin, the same reporter who'd shown up at my door with Carla's fabricated story. For the record, I said, my voice steady, I am of sound mind, and I have the medical documentation to prove it. What my daughter has done is not just heartbreaking, it's criminal. Grace's fingers flew across her keyboard. And you're willing to press charges? I've already signed the complaint, I said. Forgery, fraud, identity theft, and attempted burglary. The article appeared the next morning with the headline, Mother Accuses Daughter of Elaborate Fraud Scheme. It detailed everything, the forged documents, the fraudulent loan, the nightclub investment with her convicted felon boyfriend, and the discovery of David's actual will. My phone rang non-stop that day. Friends offering support. Strangers who did the article. Even my old boss called to say he'd always known Carla had a calculating streak. The most surprising call came from James Hatfield, David's old friend and the co-trustee named in his will. Eleanor, I'm so sorry, he said, his voice heavy with regret. David suspected Carla was having financial problems. That's why he updated his will. I should have checked on you sooner. You knew about the will changes? I helped him make them. He was worried about Carla's spending habits and some of the people she was associating with. When I heard nothing after his funeral, I assumed everything was settled. Carla made sure it appeared that way, I said bitterly. Jamie Sigid. There's something else you should know. David kept records, detailed notes about money Carla had asked to borrow, investments she wanted him to back. He was building a case to confront her. My hachashid. David had been trying to protect me even then, keeping Carla's troubling behavior to himself while documenting everything. I still have those records, James continued. They might help your case. Send them to my attorney, I replied. We're going to court next week. Script part separator, . The courthouse steps felt like a mountain on the day of our preliminary hearing. Thomas walked beside me as camera flashes popped from the small crowd of reporters. Grace Chen among them. Remember, head high, Thomas murmured. You've done nothing wrong. I nodded, clutching my handbag with white knuckles. Inside was David's wedding photo, my private talisman for the battle ahead. The courtroom hushed as we entered. Carla sat at the defendant's table, wearing a conservative navy dress that made her look younger, vulnerable. Rick was noticeably absent. Where's her partner in crime? I whispered. Thomas's mouth tightened. Cut and run yesterday. Emptied their joint account and disappeared. I felt a stab of maternal concern despite everything. Even now, I couldn't completely silence the part of me that worried for her. Judge Patricia Holden entered, a stern-faced woman in her 60s who, according to Thomas, had a reputation for zero tolerance toward elder abuse. Case number 27594, Wilson versus Wilson, the clerk announced. For 3 hours, Thomas methodically presented our evidence. The forged documents, bank records showing the fraudulent loan, statements from the movers hired for my forced relocation, and David's hidden will with its damning forfeiture clause. When Carla's attorney, a nervous young man clearly overwhelmed by the case, attempted to paint me as confused and manipulated, Judge Holden cut him off. Counsel, I have Mrs. Wilson's complete medical records before me. Unless you have evidence contradicting these professional assessments of her competency, move on. The courtroom seemed to hold its breath when Carla finally took the stand. Gone was the cold, calculating woman who had tried to steal my home. In her place sat someone playing the role of a concerned daughter, tears strategically welling in her eyes. I only wanted what was best for my mother, she began, voice trembling perfectly. Script part separator, . Even Thomas shifted uncomfortably beside me as Carla wove her tale of a lonely, aging mother who refused proper care, who was becoming forgetful and making poor decisions. She spoke of sleepless nights worrying about me, of her desperate measures born from love, not greed. But Judge Holden wasn't buying it. Ms. Wilson, she interrupted, these bank records show you transferred $150,000 from a fraudulent loan in your mother's name directly to Midnight Ventures LLC. Is that your nightclub investment? Carla faltered. It's a legitimate business opportunity that would benefit us both. Did your mother consent to this loan? Not formally, but... Yes or no, Ms. Wilson? Carla's mask slipped. She wouldn't have understood the opportunity. The judge's eyes narrowed. So that's a no. What happened next shocked everyone. Carla's attorney stood up and requested a brief recess. When court resumed 15 minutes later, he announced they were changing their defense strategy. Your Honor, my client wishes to admit to the fraud charges in exchange for consideration regarding sentencing. A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Carla stared straight ahead, her face ashen. The judge turned to me. Mrs. Wilson, as the victim, how do you wish to proceed? All eyes focused on me. This was the moment of truth. My daughter had betrayed me in the worst possible way, had tried to strip me of my home, my dignity, my voice. And yet, I asked for a moment to confer with my attorney. The judge nodded, and Thomas and I stepped into a side room. You don't have to decide right now, Thomas said gently. I shook my head. Yes, I do. She's still my daughter. When we returned, the courtroom fell silent. Your Honor, I began, my voice stronger than I expected. I don't want my daughter to go to prison. What I want is justice and protection. I looked directly at Carla. For the first time, she couldn't meet my eyes. I request full restitution of the stolen funds, permanent legal protection of my property, and mandatory financial counseling and community service for my daughter. The judge considered this. Ms. Wilson, your mother is showing remarkable mercy. Do you understand that? Carla nodded, a tear finally, genuinely, sliding down her cheek. 1 month later, I sat in my garden, the spring flowers David and I had planted years ago blooming around me. The court case had made local headlines. Mother's compassion spares daughter jail time in elder fraud case. Carla was serving 500 hours of community service at a senior center and repaying every penny through garnished wages. Rick had been arrested in Nevada for similar schemes against other vulnerable women. The phone rang, Margaret calling to check on me. How are you really doing, Eleanor? She asked. I watched a hummingbird hover near my roses, David's favorites. I'm rebuilding, I said truthfully. Not just my life, but my sense of who I am. And Carla? I sighed. We have a long road ahead. She's in therapy now. Maybe someday. After we hung up, I walked through my house, my home, touching the familiar walls that had witnessed both my deepest joys and sorrows. The betrayal still ached, but beneath it was something unexpected, freedom. In trying to take everything from me, Carla had inadvertently given me the greatest gift, the discovery of my own strength. I was no longer just David's widow or Carla's mother. I was Eleanor Wilson, survivor. And that was enough.